We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Hi, and welcome to Talk Up Your Biz. I'm Jean-Noel Bassior, and usually I co-host this show with Susan Levin, but she's not here today, so my special co-host is Deborah Kagan. Hi, Deborah.
Everybody. Hey, Jean-Noel. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so much for doing this. And we're going to talk a little about your work in a few minutes, too. But our guests today are Linda Salazar, and she is a relationship coach, and she's been doing her work for 15 years, but she's recently added a really exciting new piece to her practice, which is hand analysis, scientific hand analysis. So she's going to tell us about some of the interesting results that she's getting with that. And Michael Hinkson, he is a blind sales executive who was in the North Tower in New York when 9/11 happened, and the plane struck the building, and all he had was to rely on his guide dog, Roselle. That was the only way that he could possibly get out of the building, down over 1,000 stairs to get down. So he has an interesting story. He talks about the bond between animals and humans and how to trust more. So he has a wonderful story. So, and we also have a wonderful article by Lois Kramer. Are you familiar with her work? Is that how you pronounce it?
You know, I'm not actually. So I was so happy that we're going to be talking about it because I got to do a little research and find out a bit about her.
Yeah, she's wonderful. She has all these amazing blog posts and about speaking. So she has one today that we're going to go over. But let's talk about, why don't you mention your book and your work so that people know who you are?
Sure. Thank you. So I'm Deborah Kagan, and I'm a sensual lifestyle specialist. And basically what that means is I help women rock their mojo so they can feel super confident about who they are, feel amazing in their skin, and as I like to say, live a turned on life, right? One where you're just feeling confident and you are experiencing wonderful professional and personal success.
That sounds really good.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun, and I do love what I do. And you mentioned I wrote a book. It's called Find Your Me Spot, and it's 52 ways to reclaim your confidence, feel good in your skin, and live a turned-on life. And we went number one on Amazon launch day. So
really,
yeah, it was really exciting. We did one of those. Woo-hoo, yeah, we did.
Wow. Well, of course, I have to ask what the Me Spot is.
Well, that Me Spot is where you feel totally confident about who you are, right? It's that knowing of yourself where you can walk out in your life, magnetize what it is that you're wanting towards you. And it's like where you walk into a room and people go, I need to know her. Right? I need to know what she's up to, not by what you're wearing, not by what you're saying. It's a certain presence. And so the Me Spot helps you to come alive in a way that you project that.
Sounds good. And your next book is Find Your Tea Spot, right?
I could have
a whole series there.
I love tea lattes, so we could riff on the whole tea thing.
Just kidding. So Lois Kramer, I notice in this blog, has really done a good thing because this article she has is getting back to the basics, very much what the show is about, which is how do you get out there and start speaking about your business or your book or your film or your product or whatever, it is that where, the area of your expertise. And I know you do that. So, as we go through this, feel free to tell us how you are finding speaking gigs and getting out there and speaking.
One thing I'll mention right away, which is, of course, in homage and great gratitude to your regular co-host, Susan Levin, is that I actually just had a wonderful speaking engagement in Fresno last week at the Central California Women's Conference. I had standing room only, and they found me from Speaker Services.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Right?
Yeah.
So that service really is fantastic, and it does give you exposure, especially because Susan's had that site and that service for so many years. It has a great reputation.
It does. A lot of people know it's speakerservices.com, and you can always email Susan at speakerservices.com. And she produces this show. She lines up all the guests, and she produces my show after this one, The Book Beat. So she's doing just this amazing job. So in this in this article by Lois Kramer, she takes you step by step through like all these moving parts that you need to get out there and speak. And so obviously the first one is create your talk. And she says, I'm going to assume you have a speech, and if you don't, get one. And I know Susan and I have worked with a lot of people, and it's really amazing because it is challenging for a lot of people. I mean, if you haven't thought about how do I give like a 1-hour speech, you know, and Susan often says, well, you can only make 3 points in a 1-hour speech. Some of the tips I've picked up from her are storytelling is good. I like to when I speak, I kind of like to make it interactive right away.
I agree.
Because it sets me at ease. Do you find that as well?
Yeah, I also think, you want to engage the audience, right? So the more that we can connect with whoever's in the room, the more that they're going to enjoy it, instead of just being this talking head, either, on the stage or whatever platform you're speaking on.
Right.
So then, and there are all sorts of ways to engage your audience. Like, there are games, there's just call and response, even just getting them to say, hello, and I have my audience reply with an, oh yeah, when they agree with something, right? Because it's fun, it's a little sassy, it fits what I'm talking about.
And it kind of gets the energy moving, doesn't it?
Totally. Yeah. And I'm sure you've also been in a room where there might not be a great speaker. We've all experienced that at some point. And, that's kind of painful.
It is.
It's really kind of painful. And it doesn't need to be that way. And I know, public speaking, of course, is one of the major fears that most people have. And it's like, oh, how can I get up in front of a room full of people, whether it be 5 people or 5,000 people? And I love your idea of, the fact everyone really says have 3 solid points, and then stories to support those points.
Yeah, and I like to ask the audience, if they've experienced something that I'm going to talk about. So it's kind of like whatever the problem is, there's usually a problem and a solution. Your speech is, of course, giving solutions. So I just feel better when if I do that, it's more like a conversation right from the beginning. Right. So for me, that one happens to work well. But other people telling a great story works well to open. And then something else that Susan and I have seen a lot is her second tip is pinpoint your target audience. And people go like, I've never thought about that. And a lot of times people go like, well, my speech is for everybody.
No. Let's just say no right there. It's not.
No, it isn't. It's just like saying when I coach people, on how to write their books, it's like, what age? Well, my book is a gift book for all ages. It's like, no, So how do you approach your target audience? How have you identified it?
Well, it's taken some time actually, and also just by experience and doing some polls. I have an email community, right, that I communicate with regularly. So I do ask them, and you want to ask people that you come across, people that come to your talks, what it is that really interests them, because then you're going to find out more directly who that segment is, right? My segment is women. I can say, oh, sure, right? My work is for all women. Well, it's not. Right.
So what kind of women?
The median for me, what I found is where it's like early 30s, early to mid 30s to early 50s, right? That's just the age range for me. And then what I found out is usually my women, my tribe, they're spiritually minded of some sort, right? They have an eagerness to learn that way, or they already are engaged in that realm. And either one of two things, right? They've come to a point in their life where they're super accomplished, they've done amazing things, and they've forgotten what it really feels like to be a woman, like just comfortable in your skin as a woman, instead of that kind of do, go mode, which has tended to feel, more masculine, we say these days.
Right, to build a career and to get where they are. But in pinpointing your target audience, I mean, how did you learn that women perhaps over 50 didn't resonate with your message so much? Or?
Well, it was really also the women who were coming to me. So again, it did take some time. Like I didn't figure this out in the first week. It took about 6 months really to understand. And it was honestly, it's like, who are the people that are already paying you for what you're doing?
So you were noticing. That's interesting. You were noticing who was actually coming. That's interesting.
And you need to pay attention to that, because they're the ones that are obviously benefiting from your services or what you have to offer. And so that will start to tell you. And you want to start to look at, it's probably your top 3 to 5 sort of star clients, let's say. And those will be the ones that you'll go, okay, that's more of the target. That's where I need to find more of those people.
That's interesting. So, and then this tip I feel is interesting too. Get to Toastmasters, which she calls the off-Broadway of speaking, because I asked somebody about Toastmasters recently, and they were raving about it, and I had no idea. I mean, I know it's good, but they were really raving about it. Have you had any experience with?
No, I was going to say that's a tip I probably need to implement. And what I'd like to say, though, I'm sure it's great because I have heard really good things about it.
Right.
And I think it all depends also about your chapter and where you're located
That's
and
true,
all of those things as well.
Yeah.
It's worth checking out.
Yeah, and if it doesn't feel right, then join another chapter because it should. It's kind of like writers groups, It's like if it doesn't feel right for whatever reason, then look for another local group,
Well, and I want to just add a tip to that as well, because I think it's a really important one, which one of my mentors shared with me is get yourself to an improv class.
That's a good
Toastmasters
idea.
is great. They'll give you some more of the nuts and bolts of being a public speaker. However, when you're out there and even when you're doing interviews like this or you're giving your talk, you want to be able to riff and be in the moment. And so if you have that comfort level with improving, it's going to help you across the board.
Yeah, that's a great tip, actually.
Yeah.
I think improv is good for a lot of areas of life, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a little scary sometimes, isn't it?
It's totally scary. And what's really fun is you find these new reflexes within you that you didn't necessarily know you have, and you're like, oh, okay, I can do it. I can do it on the fly. Be prepared and be ready for something new, something unexpected to happen. And a lot of times magic really comes in those very unexpected moments.
Yeah, be prepared to make strange sounds and funny faces.
And be weird animals and all that.
Right. And then she says that, I didn't know this, she says that every area has a local business journal that comes out on Friday. And that contains a calendar which lists these meetings that take place, like that business groups and associations have. So even if you don't have a local one that comes out every Friday, which she seems to think there is, but whatever it is, find out what it is at your area, and that is a great resource to find out, who should I call, which is her next tip. Call the group and ask if you can present your program. She has an interesting thing she says too. She goes like, well, don't say I speak for free.
Right.
Okay. She goes, if after you're in conversation with them, which we'll talk about in a minute, you can say like, well, I could waive my fee.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on that?
I agree with that because the fact of the matter is we're in a world where everything has perceived value. And so some people like things for free, right? There are a lot of people who love to get free stuff. However, if you're positioning yourself as an expert, as somebody who has something really valuable and worthwhile, it's not free, right? It is not
Sometimes
free.
you get what you pay for.
Yeah, and so therefore, waive your fee. And even if you have never been paid before, you're going to be waiving your fee.
That's
right?
true, technically, isn't it?
Yeah, and utilize it. I think it's a great tip to remember because if you are giving something, it does have value for someone, and too many people undervalue what they have to offer.
True. And Susan and I have often taught classes in, like, how do you make these calls? So how do you? Well, it is a kind of cold calling, but it doesn't have to be totally cold, because if you are going to pick up the phone and call a group, what you really want to do is research that group and find out what problems are they facing. Research their conferences or their last business meeting. I mean, you're probably going to start small, so you're probably not going after a huge conference.
Right.
But try to find out what you can, like even if it's like the local chamber of commerce. I mean, what problems are they facing? And if you call up and have a lead sentence, in your phone pitch that says, that mentions their problem and how you can solve it. And by the way, I'm a speaker who I heard you were facing, ABC, and I have this XYZ solution. Then they will sit up and listen.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be totally cold. And then when you follow up, it's good to follow up with a very brief email proposal, because everybody wants to see something in writing. They really do. Chances of you're doing this on a handshake or over the phone are kind of slim.
Right.
So they want a short proposal where you state, the benefits, state what you talk about, kind of sum up your speech in a paragraph. All these things are things that you can learn to do.
Yeah, and brevity really is the key here.
It is.
Because, we're all busy, and those people are really, really busy. So organizers do not want to sit here and read, this lengthy email or proposal.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that's a very important point.
Right. Even for this show, we ask people to send like just a couple paragraphs about yourself, and everybody wants to just cut and paste, a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And people really, like you say, it's a really good point, because people really do appreciate when you can focus and boil it down.
And also, know, I'll add to that, is it's know what they're facing, but what does their audience want? Right? What are they wanting their audience to know about? And so if you really have that expertise in that area, fantastic. An even better way to communicate your pitch, so to speak.
If you really want to get sophisticated, put a Google alert out on that group.
Yes.
Anytime they're in the news, anything happens, you will get a Google alert right at your doorstep. And you will know more about that group than you ever imagined you could know. And from your free talk, you can get a testimonial. You can ask for that. And so next gig that you're trying to get, I mean, they don't know that you spoke for free, right? But you can, garner these testimonials. So that's kind of a nifty little thing you can do as well.
Well, and the other thing I'd love to share, which is a step further than that too, is if you're somebody who has programs or books or any products, you make a complimentary offer to your audience when you're there, so you can collect people's information, their emails, their names. I just did that at this conference. It was huge, this conference. Probably about, I now have about we're doing the final tally, but 600 to 700 new leads that wanted what I was offering. They were wanting that complimentary gift. And so that starts a new relationship after the event. So, you can continue to build your business.
What are you going to do with those leads? How are you going to approach that?
Well, we do have an email marketing system that we use, and so I have gifts that they're delivered via email, and then there's follow-up sequences that they'll receive via email. People are invited to then have a session with me on the phone, complimentary. Yeah, so there's a whole follow-up system set in place.
So there must have been a few thousand people there, right?
Oh yeah, there was almost 3,600.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, and you got that through Speaker Services. Congratulations.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was really, really fun.
That is wonderful.
I think I did, but let's just say I did.
We've heard, yeah. Oh, okay. Sorry, I asked. No, we do have many clients that get gigs like that, so that's why I was wondering.
Yeah.
And when you, of course, leverage this free talk that you've done, when, your next gig, you can just put those testimonials on your website. And another thing, you made me think of was that, of course, you can sell your products in the back of the room with their permission. You have to have their permission.
Absolutely.
But when you speak for free, that's a courtesy usually you are granted. So if you have a book, or a CD or some kind of product.
And you call it an autograph table. Right, it's not a product table these days. They call it an autograph table, which is a little bit more elegant. So you're not saying, "Hey, let me sell my stuff," but meanwhile, you are selling your stuff, and everybody understands that it's a product table, but people are calling it an autograph table.
Oh, that's a new term I haven't heard.
Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
Interesting.
So, hot on the street.
So do you have
to
sit there and sign? Is that
and I sold out of all my books, so I sat there and had a nice autograph table, and people bought that and other products. So it's definitely. I love the clapping. It's so fun.
Very good.
Yeah.
And then she says, join the NSA, National Speakers Association. That's when you feel like you really are a speaker and you're confident. And she says that is a great place to network. Are you in that, by the way? Or?
Not officially yet. I actually just met a couple speakers who from Phoenix area, and they said, join the NSA. And there was, it's interesting. They were actually saying you don't have to be that experienced, right? Because you will learn new techniques and new ways to build your business as a speaker through the NSA.
Yeah.
So I would say you don't have to be an experienced speaker to join, right? Get in. If this is what you're wanting to do, take those steps. It's always about the action that you take in whatever realm that you are going to achieve your goal. Right?
Yeah, and that's interesting you say that, because it's always intimidated me, the National Speakers Association. I mean, I've got to be a speaker on a national level. So anyway, great. Those are tips. I hope that you guys out there will at least try to get your feet wet with one or two of those to start out. And our first guest, when we come back, is going to be Linda Salazar, who has been doing relationship work for over 15 years between intimate partners, parents and kids and siblings, extended family. And she has recently introduced this scientific system of hand analysis into her practice. And she's going to tell us about the results she's getting, which may surprise you. This is Talk Up Your Biz, and we're here at LA Talk Live.
To build a world closer Meet Betsy. She is 29 years old and lives in Los Angeles. Recently, Betsy sent her father an email that brought tears of joy to his eyes. You see, Betsy suffers from autism, and this was the first email she had ever sent to anyone. Betsy is just one of the many students at Empower Tech, a nonprofit organization in Los Angeles that trains persons living with a broad range of physical, cognitive, and developmental disabilities how to use computers to do the things that so many of us take for granted: email, online banking, research, and entertainment. Through modern assistive technology, instructors at Empower Tech help hundreds of people just like Betsy every year. They teach them the basic skills required to function independently in 21st century society. But with new state budget cuts, all of that could change. Empower Tech needs your help if it's going to continue making a difference here in our community. Please visit www.empowertech.org. That's www.empowertech.org to make a secure, tax-deductible contribution and to learn more about this important community resource and to see for yourself what some of the amazing students and teachers do on a daily basis. Betsy and the 1.8 million people living with disabilities in Los Angeles County, thank you for caring enough to show your support.
Hi, this is Elena inviting you to join me every Wednesday at noon for Elena's Beauty Talk and more, exclusively on LA Talk Live. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio, R&B, or watch us on Ustream.tv. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Today is my day, a brand new beginning. The future will blossom magnificently.
Hi, and welcome back to Talk Up Your Biz. I'm Jean-Noel Bassior with my co-host today, Deborah Kagan.
Hey, everybody.
Hey. And we've got Linda Salazar here between us. And she has worked on, I like your intro, for decades. You have worked on film and television sets through thousands of pressure cooker situations, surrounded by very talented and extremely temperamental performers, directors, and crew members. Having done celebrity interviews for many years, I know what you mean.
Yeah, you get it.
I get it. But this is how you honed your coaching skills.
It is indeed. Thank you.
And you are an in-demand speaker and author, relationship coach, and certified scientific hand analyst, which we are going to talk about quite a bit. And you help women create fulfilling relationships and lives through your coaching and specialized programs. You've been on KCAL Channel 9 here locally in Los Angeles and featured in the LA Times and Parent Magazine, and you're the author of Awaken the Genie Within.
Correct. You got
Welcome.
it all right. Thank you. It's great
So
to be
I'm
here.
going to ask you the question now that people used to ask me, because in the dark ages, as you know, I used to do palmistry
Right.
when it was called that.
Yep.
But the question, whether we call it scientific hand analysis or palmistry or whatever, I'm sure you know what the question is. How can your hands possibly reflect what in anything about your being, your personality? So do you get asked that a lot?
I get asked that all the time.
Yeah.
I get
how
asked
is
three
this
questions,
possible?
so you're like a gypsy reader.
Yeah, exactly.
Not quite. Well, let me first say what this is not.
Yes.
So I really clear that up here. It is not about predicting the future. I'm not going to tell people how many kids they're going to have, if they're going to get married, if they're going to get divorced, when they're going to come into that fortune they're hoping for.
And we used to say, if you looked here,
yeah, you
and
could tell how
counted
many
the lines,
kids. Yeah. I don't do
that
any
was
of
how
that.
many kids.
Yeah, exactly. No, the hands are literally a window into our inner world, into our soul, if you will. They reveal our characteristics, our personality traits, our gift markings, our conflicts, our inner turmoil. I can determine somebody's emotional style, which is their heart and how they want to be in relationships. I can determine from their headline, their thinking style, their innate thinking style. Do they think quickly on their feet, or do they make decisions quickly?
Now, I know that this, and it works out, and it's true, and it matches, but how do you think that these lines and the
Well,
shape actually reflect?
Okay,
the
so
being?
the hands
Yeah.
are a map, if you will, of the major neural pathways of the brain processing. So, for instance, if as we change our thinking, if you will, at a deep cellular level, so can some of this information in the hands.
Because the hands reflect the brain, right?
The hands are reflecting what's going on in our brains. And I have seen people's lines changed based on what is going on in their own personal life, whether it's been a tragic event and they've moved beyond that tragic event, and then lines have gone away, the hand has calmed down. It was fascinating to me to see that, because that was one way of me knowing empirically that this brain of ours is actually reflecting in our hands. But there is a place of the hands that never ever changes. And this is where, people can look at you and go, now, wait a minute there. And it's the fingerprints. Because the fingerprints are created 5 months before you're born. And they never ever change. And they're what's considered holding your soul's agenda.
But they do reflect personality types, don't they?
They reflect your life purpose, your life lessons, and something called your life school, which is how you filter the world, how you're moving through the world in your day-to-day life, and how you're taking it in and walking your path. So that's very specific with those fingerprints of determining. Those personality traits and characteristic traits and those strengths and the weaknesses and those dilemmas and the challenges that we have are all showing up in the rest of the hand. So when you're taking that piece of the hand that you're looking at in the palm of the hand and the length of the finger and the width of the finger and the weaknesses of the finger, if it's shrunken, if one particular zone of the finger is much larger than another zone, you take all this into consideration and apply what the soul's agenda came here to master in this lifetime. Now that could be getting a little woo-woo, but I will tell you from my own personal experience and all the hands that I have read, it is the response you get back from people going, oh my gosh, this is so true about me. And suddenly, what was once a challenge for somebody, what was once an inner turmoil that was going on inside of them, is having the opportunity to be cleared up. Because they now know what their specific life lesson is, and
they're
why,
on the right track.
Well, why they keep getting stuck.
I see.
And then this is so fascinating to me because, I love information, and so when you can show somebody what their purpose is and all these other bits, is it they start to then find a new way to be with themselves?
Absolutely.
Is that
I
in
love that
essence?
question. Thank you for asking that, because it is an opportunity for people to feel so witnessed in their life, perhaps for the first time. And now they're seeing themselves and they're expressing that, oh my God, I'm not crazy. There's really nothing wrong with me. I just have these aspects of myself that need shoring up, if you will, whatever weakness may be coming. We've all got our weaknesses. And when you can pinpoint areas that are a little weak and pinpoint their strengths, and teach them how they can shore up those weaknesses and then apply into their life the strengths, their life takes a complete turn. It's magnificent to watch people's ahas come to be when they start to hear certain aspects about themselves that they knew at a deep level, but they never knew how to explain it, how to talk about it, how to reach out to even ask for help around it.
I love this. It seems like a way also that people can value themselves more. And we need so much more of that in today's culture. So
absolutely.
I think what you're doing is really, really helpful.
It's such an intimate way to connect with yourself through your hands, isn't it?
I mean, if there's anything that has taught me more about me and the massive changes that I've gone through in my own life, it has happened because of my study, first from my own hand analysis reading from someone, and then of my study of it, because it is a requirement, as far as I'm concerned, to be willing to take what I'm learning about myself, in particular my life lessons, and then start utilizing and working with those lessons in my life and becoming so aware of how I operate and where I can make changes in order to then be able to really serve others.
Talk about one of your clients. Do you have a story for us of a client who...
I have so many stories.
Yeah, pick what one surprised you the most?
Well, I don't know that anyone necessarily surprises me the most.
Or touched you the most.
Touched me, there's a lot of those. And I'm going to talk about a relationship one, since I love relationship work. And it was a woman that came to me that was struggling in her marriage after a very long time. They had gone to therapy together, and it just wasn't doing the trick. And I said, well, what is it that you're most struggling with? And she said, well, I don't get any real connection from him. I don't feel this love. I feel like we're just kind of going through the motions and there's nothing there anymore. And I need somebody to really connect with me. Now, I'm looking at her hands and I see that she has what's called a big heart. A big heart is somebody who does need a lot of connection, and they want to hear verbally that they're appreciated and they're loved and they look good and they're pretty and anything else that just makes them feel connected.
And what did you see in her hands? What does that
It was
look
her
like?
heart line, which the heart line
yeah.
is at the top of the palm, and it starts underneath which camera? Where can I show that in the... there we are. Hello. It starts underneath the pinky finger, and it travels across the hand, and it can end anywhere from the middle finger all the way over to this index finger. It can be straight or it can be curved. The more straight a line is in the hand, whether it's the heart line or any other lines, the less emotions they're going to show outwardly. The more curving it has, the more they're willing to show their emotions outwardly. So I knew that she had a big heart because that heart line travels from underneath the pinky and travels all the way up over to this index finger here. And as she, knowing what a big heart is, this nurturing, caring, loving, put your head on their shoulder and they're just going to put their arm around you and listen to you and be empathetic. And they love the connection. They're going to have Thanksgiving at their house. They want to bring family together. They want to connect people and bring friends together. But they need that. That's how they want to be loved, and that's how they show their love. So I asked her to just tell me a little bit about her husband. And she shared with me that he doesn't ever express himself in a loving way, and he barely touches her, and he goes to work, and then he comes home, and he wants to go into his office and work some more, and maybe they'll spend a little bit of time at dinner. And I'm hearing this work, and I'm thinking he just might be the hermit type. And that is somebody where work is a non-negotiable, freedom is a non-negotiable. They will keep their feelings close to their chest, but they will show their love by the things they do for you. So I said to her, instead of telling me all these negatives about him, share with me what is good about him. And she said, well, he'll wash my car. Well, she started making this list. He'll wash my car, and he'll make me breakfast sometimes and bring it to me in bed, and he makes wonderful dinners, and he's really good help cleaning around the house, and he'll put gas in my car, and I'm thinking,
Send him over.
Yeah, right. That's exactly what I thought.
No disrespect to my sweetheart.
Of course,
sorry.
I understand. And none to my husband. I thought, what's the complaint here? So I said, okay, what I think we have here is a hermit. Can't be know for sure. I said, so tell me, in terms of his work, does he is coming home and he works a lot, and yet he still needs to go and spend a lot of time by himself, correct? She said, yes. I said, is he loyal? Can you count on him in an emergency? Is he stoic? And she said, yeah, he's all of those things. I said, you got a hermit on your hand. And I described for her to look at what his heart line is so that she could really clearly determine that. So I said, here's what you're going to do. For the next week, I want you to, number one, shower him with gratitude and appreciation for all the things he has done for you and continues to do, because he's showing his love by all those things he's doing for you. And that was a big aha for her. And it actually made her start to cry because she wasn't thanking him. She was annoyed with him. She just focused on the fact that he wouldn't touch her and hug her and hold her. And I said, then you're going to invite him to just sit with you on the couch for a minute or two. And you're going to tell him, it's okay, I just need a minute or two of your time. I want to talk to you about my day and hear a little bit about your day. And I want you to hold his hand. And then I want you to tell him he's free to go because you don't want him to feel trapped. Key words for a hermit. Freedom and not to feel trapped. Right. And to be able to go do your work. Making this long story as short as I can, bottom line is I said, check back with me. We talked about a few other things that she could do. And I said, check back with me in about a week and let me know how it's going. 4 days later, I get a call. This relationship has done a 180.
Really?
He is suddenly now, not suddenly, but like into day 3, he's sitting on the couch with her arm around her, holding her, hugging her, telling her how much he loves her, and watching a 2-hour movie with her. I said, this is what happens, though, when you know how to love somebody the way they want to be loved, and you're appreciating him for his love towards you, and they are just in a whole new space.
Oh, that's
beautiful.
wonderful. And the hand kind of confirmed it, right? I mean,
It did, and
both
you know,
hands?
I want to be very clear here also, is that that's one marking in the hand, the heart
yeah.
line, and so we looked at other aspects of her hand to see where there could be some struggles and conflict and turmoil inside, and worked on that a little bit. But I'm telling you, just that one line.
The basic ones, the heart, the head, and the lifeline,
Correct.
right? But and then there are all, when in your work, do you deal with all those other, there's so many, there's squares and there's, you know, all
Squares
kinds of
and diamonds and circles.
right.
Yeah, you know, you don't want to overwhelm people, because
Yeah.
the truth of the matter is you could read a hand for days.
Right, but
especially
you
a
do
juicy
actually,
one.
when you look at a hand, do you sort of, you take note of all that, right?
Everything. I get, generally what I will do is get handprints from
Get a
people.
print.
So I will work with people all over the world. The furthest one I've had is Malaysia. And they take a print of their hands and then they send it back to me. And I will study it. I'll give myself a little bit of time. I like to just kind of get into the energy of the hand, if you will.
Yeah.
And really get the essence of everything that's going, and then just kind of pick 3 segments that are telling me a story. I want to know what their, what's called in hand analysis, their delicious dilemma is, so that I can then focus on just a few things so that we can start to break open where they're most struggling.
I love that languaging. That's so my language. Delicious dilemma.
Yeah, that sounds like
Right?
something you say.
It's you know, it's like mojo-liciousness. So I have a technical question.
Yeah.
So which hand do you focus on, and are
Good
the
question.
lines on hands the same?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
What we were taught in palmistry was your, well, I'll let you explain it, but
Right
one was
hand
your
being
life, yeah.
the right hand being your outer world hand.
Depending on whether you were right-handed or
Right.
left-handed,
Well,
right?
there's absolutely a little bit of controversy around this, but what I am learning and have learned actually, we're looking at this now as the right hand is the outer world hand, how you present yourself to the outer world. It's what you shake with, and your left hand is your personal at home in life in your slippers. Now, if the left hand is put together much better than the right hand, we're using that as your outer world hand. So you can have 2 different heart lines. You can have a different heart line in your inner world and a different heart line on your outer world. I have 4 heart lines on my right hand.
You do?
So I can literally
4?
shift. Yeah, all 4. There's 4 main heart lines. I can shift between different emotional styles depending who I'm with. But I have to be careful so that I don't ignore my innate emotional style in that moment that I'm most authentically connected to.
So what's the heart line like on your left hand?
It's a passionate, goes up to my, it's a passionate going up to my middle finger, but starting to head over to my index finger, which wants to play the role of the big heart.
Right.
So I now that I know that, I try not to necessarily squash my passionate self, which is vivacious and gregarious and loves to have fun and be bright and energetic.
So this work has changed you.
Oh, it has just allowed me to be exactly who I am and not be afraid of it and not worry about what other people think about it. Because I just then, as we're talking about that authentic piece of us, then we bring more of that into our life in the world.
Well, it's so great. It's like the blueprint of who we are.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah, beautiful.
exactly.
Yeah.
And how can people get in touch with you?
They can go to my website at www.yourheartisinyourhands.com or linda@yourheartisinyourhands.com.
Yourheartisinyourhands.com.
Right.
Okay, that's
Website
easy
and
to
email.
remember.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. It's been so much fun. Thank you both.
Well, when the plane struck the North Tower on 9/11, Michael Hinkson was just sitting down to a meeting, and he had his guide dog, Roselle, at his feet, and Michael is blind, so he heard the sounds of glass shattering and falling debris, and at that moment, he had to make a decision, and that was whether he was going to trust Roselle's judgment to get him to safety. Stay tuned for this incredible story here on Talk Up Your Biz at LA Talk Live.
Closer to heaven, planting a seed in my soul. I'm watching it grow. If you believe, we will make it together. Planting a seed in my soul, our beauty will show. I'm taking a stand.
Personal Chefs, proud sponsors of Let's Do Lunch with Chef Richard Petty. Ochre Group Personal Chefs have been providing quality gourmet culinary services to distinctive homes since 2004. For a free evaluation of dietary needs, call 818-850-9584. That's 818-850-9584. We will design a custom menu that fits your needs. So call us today, Ochre Group Personal Chefs. Let us personally make you a dish.
Hi, this is Dawn Christie inviting you to join me every Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific, for my all-new show, The Dawn Christie Show. Join me as I discuss love, spiritual readings, your purpose, why am I born, what am I here to do. So don't forget to tune in The Dawn Christie Show at 1 p.m. Pacific, exclusively on LA Talk Live. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream TV, reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, welcome back to Talk Up Your Biz. I'm Jean-Noel Bassior with my co-host here, Deborah Kagan. Hey, hi again. And we have a special guest this segment. It's Michael Hinkson. He is the author of Thunderdog, A Blind Man, His Guide Dog, and the Triumph of Trust at Ground Zero. And Michael is a blind sales executive and guide dog user who was in the North Tower on 9/11 when the plane struck. And to escape, he had to make his way through shattered glass and debris and go down 1,463 stairs.
Whoa.
Amazing. And I know, hi, Michael, are you there?
I am here. How are you?
Oh, great. I'm so glad you're joining us. I know you've been on the show before, and welcome back again. And so, you know, the story of you and Roselle and trusting Roselle to lead you to safety. I mean, can you know, a question I had for you was when the plane struck, what sounds did you hear?
Well, what I heard was a muffled kind of explosion. Then the building actually started tipping. As I describe it to people, what you have to understand is that the building was like a big spring. They're made that way. So there are actually expansion joints so that if a plane ever hits the building, it would be able to bend and flex, which is also why it's able to survive windstorms. So the building did everything it was supposed to do. And so we were able to take a stand for all that, and then we got out of the building. What I think is important that people need to understand is Roselle did not lead me down the stairs.
Oh, okay.
What I really want people to know, and one of the reasons I began speaking, was that this was a golden opportunity to begin to educate people about blindness and guide dogs, and it was also an opportunity to really help people come to grips with 9/11, because it wasn't an attack on just New York and Washington and even to a degree on Shanksville, Pennsylvania. It was an attack on the United States and all of humanity, anyone who believed in real peace. So it was an opportunity to be able to begin to maybe help educate people and make a difference in some lives. And in the case of Roselle, and what she did, what people need to be aware of is that a guide dog's job is to make sure that we go down or walk safely, not to know where I want to go and how to get there. That's not what a dog does. Her job is just to go in a straight line until she can't or until I tell her to turn. It's my job to know where to go and how to get there. And, you know, I know that's a hard concept for people to understand, because you all grow up with eyesight, and you grow up also thinking that eyesight is really the only game in town, which is why 76% of all people fear blindness over any other disability. But the reality is that the blindness handicap comes from people's lack of education, poor attitudes, and misconceptions about blindness, not the blindness itself.
What's
But
the biggest
even
misconception?
a lot of us who are blind don't necessarily have positive attitudes about it.
What do you think? I know you've been blind since the age of 6 months, right?
Well, actually, basically since birth, but we
Since
didn't
birth.
know it till about 4 months.
Oh, that's
after
right.
I was
That
born.
wasn't diagnosed till then. Yeah. What do you think is the biggest misconception that we have about blindness?
That blind people can't live, that blind people can't be, quote, normal, that blind people can't do anything, and that blind people are so different and so disabled because they can't see that they can't be a part of society. I still see it all the time. There are any number of agencies supposedly serving blind people who say the same thing. There are statements that people made even as late as 20 and 30 years ago that allowing blind people to govern their own affairs is like allowing first graders to govern first graders and third graders to govern third graders. In this country, we still have laws that allow companies and organizations to pay blind and other workers with disabilities less than minimum wage, because the presumption is we're not competent enough to be able to work competitively in society. But the fact is that with proper training, which is the same thing that I would say for any individual in this country, with proper training, people can perform the same job and get the same tasks done, whether you're blind, sighted, in a wheelchair, or whatever. And we may not do it exactly the same way because we may have to use different techniques. But I mean, you know, if I were to ask you, what's the one thing that you think that a blind person can't do?
Well, I recently heard about a blind, I think it was a race car driver. So I'm not sure anymore.
Yeah, but driving is the first thing that came to your mind.
Right.
Go to www.blinddriverchallenge and you will see a blind man driving a car around the Daytona Speedway in January of 2011, just before the Rolex 24 race. And it's not because he's miraculous. It's because technology is advanced to the point where we can make enough information available through alternative techniques to sight that a blind person can drive a car. And yeah, there was a blind person who recently completed trials at the Bonneville Salt Flats in a motorcycle, or on a motorcycle. I guess you can't really be in one of those, but on a motorcycle. And, you know, the fact is that technology is changing a lot about blindness and other disabilities. But here's the one thing that technology will never change. That is our attitude. Technology isn't going to really make a lot of difference in that. If we still don't think a blind person can do something, then they'll never get the chance. When I once applied for a job, I worked for a company, was let go from that company in 1984. That was because it was purchased by Xerox and they got rid of all of their salespeople pre-Xerox. So I couldn't find a job for a while. I started my own company selling computer-aided design systems to architects. And it wasn't because I could run the CAD machine, but I could learn how to run it and I could talk about it and I could do the things that were necessary to get someone in front of it and be able to operate it and see how much of a difference it could make in their lives. But after a while, I sold that business. And then I was looking to apply for a job for a company. And it was a job that I thought would really be a good one for me. But I had the usual debate about, do you say you're blind in your letter that goes along with your resume or do you not? Because if you don't say anything, you might get an interview and then they'll get ticked at you. If you do say something, you'll never get the interview because of the prejudice. And I can demonstrate the prejudice exists in so many ways. But anyway, my wife reminded me that I had taken a Dale Carnegie sales course. And by the way, she's a person with a disability. She's in a wheelchair. It's a great marriage. We don't ever have any problems. We work really well. She reads, I push. So it works out well.
Perfect partnership.
But, yeah, I mean, for like any marriage, we have our challenges. But she reminded me that I took a Dale Carnegie sales course and that I really ought to use the precepts of that in applying for this job. And so when I applied, the letter that I wrote, the last paragraph of it, it was a sales position. I said, the most important thing that you really need to know about me is that I happen to be blind. And because I'm blind, that means I've had to sell all my life just to be able to function. I've had to sell to be able to buy a house or rent a house or take my dog on an airplane. That's supposed to be legally allowed, but it still oftentimes takes sales to do that. I've had to sell to do just about everything that I need to do. So when you're hiring someone for this job, you want to hire someone who just treats sales as a profession, or do you want to hire someone who truly understands sales and recognizes that for the science and art that it is and sells 24 hours a day just because they have to. And that not only got me the interview, but it got me the job. And I think that was a lesson, and it's a lesson that I tell people a lot, and I know that they've come back and told me how it's made a difference in their life, that you turn your liabilities into assets. And, we can always do that. There may be things that happen to us that we don't have control over, but we have control over how we deal with what happens to us. We always have control over how we deal with it. And that's more important even than oftentimes the change or the thing itself.
That's an amazing example. I mean, because you have sales in your blood. You just have to live it 24/7, right?
Well, and it's true.
Yeah.
I've been removed from airplanes because they said I couldn't fly with a guide dog. I couldn't buy life insurance for the longest time because insurance companies said blind people were too high of a risk. And then a number of us got together through the National Federation of the Blind, the largest organization of blind people in the country. We started fighting the insurance companies because you know what? Although the insurance companies said that we were a higher risk, as it turns out, they were violating their own precepts. They didn't have one single shred of evidence anywhere, period. Absolutely no evidence that any person with a disability, simply based on the disability, was a higher risk. Now, if you're blind from diabetes, the diabetes is an issue. But for me, I was blind because the retina didn't form. There's nothing different about me from a standpoint of life, yet they wouldn't sell me insurance. Well, because of all of that, literally we changed the world in the United States. And today, insurance companies cannot deny us life insurance based on disability unless they can show actuarial statistics and evidentiary data. And the fact is, it doesn't exist because it doesn't. It's just not there. Blindness isn't the problem we think it is. Well, the problem is our own creation rather than reality.
Yeah, Michael, you're clearly a man on a mission, and I really appreciate your confidence and all of your information with the message that you're sharing. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your speaking and the audiences that you talk to and their reactions, because you're making some great headway here in life. So share with us a bit about your audiences and how they're reacting and what your blazing trails there.
What's really great about my story is that it fits in anywhere. Being able to talk, of course, as I do about 9/11, and I always tell the story because people want to hear it. In fact, I've been invited back to places more than once. I've spoken at colleges, universities, major corporations. This week, I'm actually at Salisbury University here in Maryland. I'm in Maryland today, where I'm talking to you from. And later in the week, I'll be speaking at a couple of luncheons and dinners for book distributors. Next week, I'm at a Colorado health risk management forum. Then I'll be the next week at the Texas A&M campus in Commerce, Texas, and also the University of Michigan. And then later in the week, I'll be at another health management organization. And it really goes across the board. And I've got a couple of other corporate presentations that I'll be making later in the month and talking about inclusion in terms of disability. So it goes across the board. And the reason that it does is because the lessons that I talk about are really lessons that fit anywhere. After 9/11, I was amazed that suddenly people asked me to start coming to speak and talk about September 11th. And not only that, they wanted to pay me for it. I was going, this is great. I don't even have to do a sales proposal. They want me to come.
This beats a sales gig.
Yeah. And so, Michael, when you go out and talk, I know you do tell the 9/11 story. And are there other things like do you talk about learning to trust? Do you talk about risk taking? Because I know that these are things that may be more things you have to depend on sometimes than many of us do. Is that part of what you speak about?
Well, I think actually we all do it. We just don't always think about it. And sometimes it's made more comfortable for us, like signs on the walls and so on that I don't get to see. But yes, absolutely. I talk about risk-taking. I talk about trust and teamwork, and I use the relationship I have with my guide dog. Because actually what we learn when we're getting guide dogs, what we learn first and foremost is team building. So I've learned a whole lot more about how to build a team from working with 7 guide dogs over the last 49 years than I could ever possibly learn from Ken Blanchard, Tony Robbins, Brendan Burchard, and all of the experts out there, because it's real. It isn't just talking about it. It's putting it into practice. And that's what I bring to the presentations that I give, because I talk about it and I use the 9/11 story as an example. Because you see, for me, 9/11 was just a validation of how I've lived my life. I don't want it to be the defining moment of my life. It is simply, if it's anything defining, it's proving that everything that I felt about blindness and about me actually works. So I learned to talk about that. I learned to tell stories around not only 9/11, but how other people have reacted not only to my speaking, but other things that have happened since 9/11 that help in the process. And of course, you mentioned Thunderdog, which was published in August 2011, and literally within its first week became a New York Times bestseller. It was actually on the bestseller list again 3 weeks ago, so we're excited about that.
That's great.
And the book isn't a 9/11 book. The book is a story about my life, lessons I've learned, and again, 9/11 is integral to it because everything that I believe happened to me and my ability to survive came from lessons that I learned. So each chapter begins with something from 9/11, then we go back into parts of my life, and then we come back at the end of each chapter to something on 9/11, and we continue the day. So
Michael,
people will
I noticed that, not to interrupt you, but our time is short, and terrorism is in the news a lot the last couple of weeks. Yeah. And I noticed that with Speaker Services on your listing, you have a talk called Turning the Tables on Terrorism. Is that a talk you're still giving? And what are some of the key points that you make in that talk?
Terrorism can be defined in a lot of ways. It can be what we have, whether it's dealing with foreign terrorists, whether it's our politicians who are holding us hostage because they insist that something has to be done a certain way rather than finding a way to compromise. It could be terror that we feel internally because some change is happening in our lives. And the fact of the matter is that we all can deal with those things. And it starts with the whole idea of don't worry about what you can control. Focus on what you can control. Don't worry about what you cannot control. The rest will take care of itself, because if you spend time worrying about the things that you don't have any control over, you're never going to get to deal with the real stuff. And the fact is that what we have to do is to deal with what we can deal with. And then maybe we may find ways to have influences on other things, but we've got to deal with our own lives, and we need to find the ways to move forward. And those are things that we can do.
And that's a great lesson across the board, right? From even our own households to our jobs to government. So that's a fantastic nugget.
Absolutely. And it's just as true for small little things that bother us, because those are important to us. So terror can be anything that upsets us. The change that we may have to go out and find a new job, the change that maybe, like Linda was talking about in her talk just a few minutes ago, the couple that wasn't getting along. That had to be terrifying for the lady. And basically Linda showed her a way to turn that around. And it does start with dealing with what you can control. And ultimately, part of the lesson that I got from Linda about the woman that she was speaking about was she was telling her to look at things a different way and approach it in a different way, and that may change the whole environment. And guess what? It certainly did.
Is there terror when you have to pick a new guide dog for yourself? Has that happened?
Not a terror. I mean, it's different for different people. For me, I'm used to the fact that it happens. There's a lot of anticipation. There is a change, and I always wonder, what am I going to get and what's going to happen? But usually I retire a guide dog with enough advance notice that we can ease into it. When my fourth guide dog, Linny, retired, it was sudden because she became ill. And I ended up actually working with a cane in New York City for 6 months, which is okay because I can get around with a cane as well as a guide dog. The only thing is that people weren't paying attention to where they were walking, and they kept stepping and breaking my cane. They kept stepping on the cane. I spent
It's
more
New York, yeah.
than I ever did with getting dog food for guide dogs. But, it can be terrifying. I know it is for some people, but for me, I choose not to be terrified by it. I choose to look at it as an opportunity. And it really can help in your mindset if you look at things that happen to you as opportunities rather than horrible, nasty things that you don't have any control over. And the fact is that change is going to happen to us. We're going to be put in situations that are uncomfortable, but what can we make out of those? What can we do to make that change better? What's the opportunity for us? And that's really the question that we have to ask and answer. And if we stop and think about it, it is the whole stop and smell the roses thing. We really can discover that there's a lot more that we can do to help our lives than we think.
Absolutely.
Michael, how can people get in touch with you?
People can go to my website, www.michaelhingson.com, MichaelHingson.com. You can buy copies of Thunderdog there, and every book that we sell on the website is autographed and photographed with Roselle Poprin. Also, they can email me, Mike at michaelhingson.com, or they can email me through a link in the website. And I would love to speak with people. We literally travel the world. As I said, I'm in Maryland today, and I'll be in Fresno and Bakersfield in California, no less, on Thursday. So we do get around and then back to Texas. So, it's the way the world is. But I would love to talk with people, and if people are looking for speakers or if they just want to talk about some of the issues, I will do my best to always respond.
Well, you're a wonderful, inspirational speaker, and we've learned so much from this segment. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you could be on the show, Michael.
Thank you.
And thanks to our guest.
I love these blogs, too.
Yes, thanks to our guest, Linda Salazar, and to you, Michael, and to my co-host, Deborah Kagan. And stay tuned. My show, The Book Beat, will come on in 30 minutes here on LA Talk Live. And I want to remind you that all these guests, these wonderful guests, are because Susan Levin, my producer, has booked them in. And a big thank you to Susan for that. So stay tuned for The Book Beat here on LA Talk Live, where we are more than just talk.
We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.